Adolf Hitler. By April 1945, the Soviet army had encircled Berlin, and Hitler's regime was collapsing from within. Surrounded in his underground bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, he refused every offer of evacuation and continued to issue orders to divisions that no longer existed. As Soviet artillery struck the city, he distributed cyanide capsules to his inner circle and prepared for death. On April 29, he married Eva Braun in a brief civil ceremony, dictated his final political testament, and the next afternoon bit into a cyanide capsule before shooting himself in the temple. Eva followed with poison. Their bodies were carried upstairs, drenched in fuel, and set on fire in the garden above, while explosions shattered the surface. When Soviet troops reached the site, only fragments of bone and jaw remained, later verified by forensic examination. The empire he promised to last 1,000 years ended inside a reinforced shelter that became his tomb. Benito Mussolini. Power abandoned him before the soldiers did. By early 1945, the German alliance was breaking apart, and the Italian Social Republic he led existed only on paper. When partisan forces advanced through the north, Mussolini tried to escape disguised as a German officer, traveling with his mistress, Clara Petacci. They were stopped at Dongo by communist partisans who instantly recognized him. The next morning, both were shot beside a stone wall, their deaths ending 20 years of dictatorship in seconds. Their bodies were driven to Milan and hung upside down in Piazzale Loreto, the same square where his regime had once displayed executed dissidents. Allied intelligence verified the photographs within hours and ordered the capture of remaining fascist leaders before they could flee. Within 2 days, every major official of the Salo Republic was dead or detained, and Mussolini's execution marked the final collapse of fascist power in Europe. Hideki Tojo. In Japan's final months of war, Tojo's authority disintegrated along with the empire he served. Once the architect of Japan's militarist expansion, he became its scapegoat after surrender. When American troops arrived to arrest him in September 1945, he attempted ritual suicide by shooting himself in the chest, but the bullet missed his heart. U.S. medics saved his life so he could stand trial before the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. Over months of proceedings, he faced charges of waging aggressive war and permitting mass atrocities across Asia. Found guilty on all counts, Tojo was hanged in December 1948 at Sugamo Prison. His final words requested mercy for the Japanese people, not himself. The general who had built his empire on death was denied the one act of control he valued most. Joseph Stalin. They found him face down on the carpet, soaked in urine and barely breathing, but no one dared touch him. For 12 hours, guards waited outside the locked door, terrified to act without orders. When doctors were finally summoned, Stalin had already suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage. He lingered for 3 days before dying on March 5, 1953. His body bore the effects of chronic hypertension and atherosclerosis, conditions worsened by years of stress and chain smoking. By the morning of March 5, his respiration stopped, and medical attendants confirmed cardiac failure as the terminal cause. The dictator who outlived every rival died from his own vascular collapse, his body finally failing under the pressure he once imposed on others. Mao Zedong. In 1976, Mao's condition was critical after years of heart disease, lung infections, and Parkinson's symptoms compounded by heavy smoking. Between September 2nd and 8th, he suffered 3 consecutive heart attacks, each reducing cardiac function and oxygen levels. Medical teams administered oxygen, vasodilators, and cardiac stimulants, but his pulse weakened and breathing grew shallow. Despite continuous monitoring and assisted ventilation, organ function deteriorated beyond recovery. At 12:10 a.m. on September 9, 1976, Mao Zedong was pronounced dead. The medical bulletin cited acute myocardial infarction and respiratory failure as the immediate causes, resulting from long-term cardiovascular degeneration. Franco. In November 1975, Franco suffered a massive heart attack while undergoing surgery to stop gastrointestinal bleeding. The operation triggered a chain of complications, including kidney failure, lung congestion, and infection. Doctors performed multiple transfusions and placed him on mechanical ventilation, but his circulation continued to deteriorate. Over the following days, he experienced several cardiac arrests before his body failed completely at 4:20 a.m. on November 20th. The medical report cited acute heart failure and multi-organ collapse as the causes of death. His death ended 36 years of authoritarian rule and led to Spain's transition toward constitutional monarchy. Nicolae Ceaușescu. The firing squad opened fire at 2:50 p.m. on December 25, 1989, ending the rule of Nicolae and Elena Ceaușescu in less than 10 seconds. Their execution followed a brief military trial held inside a Târgoviște garrison, where both were found guilty of genocide, economic sabotage, and abuse of power. Autopsy reports recorded multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and head. The tribunal had been formed hours earlier under emergency law after the army and police defected to the uprising. Ceaușescu's refusal to recognize the court or surrender authority left no option for delay. The event was filmed, released to television the same day, and confirmed the fall of the last hardline communist dictatorship in Eastern Europe, Pol Pot. By 1998, Pol Pot was living under house arrest in a jungle camp controlled by remnants of the Khmer Rouge. His health was failing from malaria, heart disease, and the effects of years in hiding. On April 15th, after hearing reports that his former commander Ta Mok intended to hand him over to international authorities, he was found dead in his sleep. Witnesses stated that his body was warm when discovered, suggesting he had died only minutes earlier. The official explanation cited heart failure, but those present reported the smell of medication and an open vial of Valium beside his bed. Rumors that he had poisoned himself to avoid capture were never confirmed, yet no autopsy was performed, leaving the exact cause of death unresolved. Saddam Hussein. The search ended in December 2003 when U.S. soldiers uncovered a concealed chamber near Ad-Dawr north of Baghdad. Saddam emerged from the hole unarmed and exhausted, surrendering without resistance. After extensive interrogation and medical evaluation, he was tried by the Iraqi High Tribunal and convicted of crimes against humanity. The court ordered execution by hanging, carried out at dawn on December 30, 2006, inside a secured Baghdad compound. Witnesses described a brief prayer before the platform released, causing immediate cervical fracture and death. An autopsy conducted by Iraqi pathologists confirmed hanging as the cause, with spinal dislocation and neck trauma consistent with rapid execution. Josip Broz, Tito. Surgical complications led to Tito's decline rather than sudden illness. In January 1980, severe circulation problems in his left leg forced hospitalization in Ljubljana. Doctors discovered extensive arterial blockage and performed multiple procedures, including amputation above the knee, to prevent gangrene from spreading. Post-operative infection and kidney failure followed within weeks, and dialysis offered no improvement. By May 4th, his blood pressure collapsed, and resuscitation efforts failed. The medical commission identified septic shock and multi-organ failure as the final causes of death, concluding a prolonged deterioration that had begun months earlier. Augusto Pinochet. On December 3, 2006, Pinochet suffered a severe heart attack at his home in Santiago and was transferred to the military hospital's intensive care unit. Doctors diagnosed an acute myocardial infarction with pulmonary edema and placed him on mechanical ventilation. Despite temporary stabilization, he experienced repeated cardiac arrhythmias over the next week. A final arrest occurred on December 10th, ending all vital activity before resuscitation could begin. The medical report confirmed congestive heart failure and acute myocardial infarction as the causes of death, closing the life of Chile's former military ruler at age 91. Fidel Castro. Decades of gastrointestinal problems, intestinal bleeding, and declining mobility had weakened Castro long before his death. In 2006, emergency surgery for intestinal perforation forced him to transfer power to his brother Raúl, and his condition remained unstable for years. By late 2016, his organs showed signs of systemic failure despite continuous medical supervision. On the night of November 25, 2016, he went into cardiac arrest at his residence in Havana. Physicians were unable to restore circulation, and death was declared at 10:29 p.m. The official announcement listed cardiac failure following prolonged intestinal disease as the cause. Kim Jong-il. On December 17, 2011, Kim Jong-il died while traveling by train between official engagements. North Korean state physicians reported acute myocardial infarction, complicated by heart failure as the cause. Intelligence assessments later indicated that he had long suffered from diabetes, hypertension, and the after-effects of a stroke in 2008, which had left partial paralysis. Continuous medical monitoring and imported European equipment were unable to prevent further cardiac deterioration. According to official records, resuscitation efforts were attempted on board but failed before arrival in Pyongyang. His death was formally declared at 8:30 a.m., ending 17 years of rule. Tortures in History Explained. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more.